Hello and welcome back to Football League World TV and this week's Yorkshire Round-Up. I'm your host Alfie Burns and joining me today we've got Ben and Billy. Thank you lads both for joining me. How are you getting on, Ben?
All right, yeah. Got a nice bit of championship football to look forward to this midweek, and we'll see how the Yorkshire teams have done over the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Billy? How are you getting on?
I'm doing well, thank you. And as Ben says there, it's always good when we have three championship matches, three Football League matches during a week.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's a lot to catch up on around the county. We've had a couple of weeks off from the Yorkshire Show, so if there's any fans tuning in that want to get involved and ask a few questions, feel free to fire away. And we're going to be starting with Sheffield United. Yeah, so we'll start with the Blades and a new signing for Slavisa Jokanovic in the form of Adelin Guediora. He's put pen to paper on a 12-month contract with the Blades today, and he joins with a wealth of experience in English football. He's made over 200 appearances, with playing for the likes of Watford, Nottingham Forest, Middlesbrough, Wolves over the course of his career. So he's played under Jokanovic a couple of times. One that will spring to mind with most people will be at Watford. So we'll come to you, Billy, to start with. What are your thoughts on the signing? Is it one that was needed at Bramall Lane?
I'm caught in two minds with this one because I think when you think about Sheffield United this season, and you even think to their late recruitment drive, they've got a lot of midfielders already, and I think bringing in Gibbs White and Horahan in, that sort of pushed Norwood and the likes of Fleck a little bit further back. And I think Norwood at the weekend was trusted in a more defensive role, and he shone really. So in terms of needed, I'm not too sure, but I think what Guediora brings is something that's perhaps missing in the side. His intelligence, his tenacity, and he's a player that Jokanovic trusts, and I think that's a big indication of why he's been brought in. And I think the fact that he's been brought in so late means that he's definitely a player that Jokanovic sees as a starter.
Yeah, and I mean he has been training with the club for a number of weeks, so it's not like he's in from the cold and that kind of thing. He'll have been used to his new teammates and that kind of thing. We'll come to it in a minute or two. But Sheffield United got a really, really good win at the weekend. Their first win in the Championship this season, beating Peterborough 6-2. And obviously, you're naturally going to say you don't really change a winning team, particularly one that's beaten a side so convincingly. Ben, tomorrow night, Sheffield United face your club, Preston. Are you expecting to see the new signing in the midfield?
Don't think so. I think, like you said, you should probably stick with a winning team unless there's injuries and suspensions. And I think even though they've had some criticism in the first few weeks, I think Fleck and Norwood probably did enough to keep the place in the lineup. I think they played alongside Burge in the first few games where they've not really picked up wins. But obviously Fleck got a goal on Saturday, and you'd probably say that obviously Burge is coming back from his COVID-related issue. He'll probably be still ahead of Guediora in the pecking order, and they've got Horahan as well. So it's a lot of competition for places, and obviously he'll be fit with training the club for 3 weeks. But it's going to be a tough decision for Jokanovic. He's got so many options, and we might not even see Guediora on the bench that much that he's got so much to pick from. But I don't think we'll see him tomorrow. Maybe at the weekend he might get everyone out. But yeah, for now I think Fleck and Norwood will keep those two positions behind the three attacking midfielders.
Yeah, I think most people would probably agree with that. After such a sparkling display almost against Peterborough, we will touch on that, Ben. I know me and you discussed it earlier in the weekend review show. Let's just get your thoughts again on the performance of Sheffield United.
Yeah, Jokanovic seems to have got a tune out of him during the international break. It was something I alluded to on one of the shows before the break, that he might need those 2 weeks to just get the new signings in, get them to play how he wants. And another player that's obviously come through in the last few weeks is Ndai, who scored twice on Saturday, and he seems to have given the fans a bit of a lift because they think he's one of the star youngsters at the club. not really been given much of a chance by Wilder last season. Djukanovic has brought him in, and he seems to have been kind of like a breath of fresh air. I think Peterborough was the ideal game for them as well. They were never going to park the bus with Darren Ferguson's teams, like to attack. And I think floodgates could open from now, hopefully not too much tomorrow night. Hopefully restricting to 1 or 2 goals or ideally 0. But I think in the coming weeks we will see Sheffield United advance up the table just simply because of the players they've got. They're far too good to be lingering in the bottom half of the Championship, and the likes of Horan and Gibbs White coming in, it's only a positive for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had a comment from Paul Lewington, who's asking us for our thoughts on Ndai, and as you've touched on there, he was excellent at the weekend with 2 goals. Your thoughts on him, Billy, and his performance at the weekend?
Yeah, as he says, it's very exciting. He comes into a team that's stacked with talent at the moment, and he's forced himself as a young player into the side, which is also very, very promising. I think with Ndai as well, that can only spur him on to improve, and he's sort of been brought in at the right time where it seems that the confidence has begun again. It seems that this international break has been a new starting point for the club, and I think that can only bode well for Ndai and sort of the younger players coming through at the team at Sheffield United. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sheffield United getting a win straight after the international break, and interestingly, they were the only side in Yorkshire to post 3 points at the weekend. And next up, we're going to look at one of those defeated sides in Huddersfield Town. So sort of moving away from the weekend fixtures and that kind of thing, we're going to stick with the transfers as we talk about Huddersfield and Phil Hodgkinson, the Huddersfield chairman, has done a really in-depth sort of interview with some journalists over the last week, and it's really worth checking out if you haven't done so already. And I suppose the main headline from there involves Lewis O'Brien, and O'Brien was the centre of a big transfer saga over the summer involving Leeds United, who were keen to take him to the Premier League, and Hodgkinson's revealed that Huddersfield knocked back a bid that would total to £13 million in the end if all was well with the add-ons and that kind of thing. But the upfront fee wasn't attractive enough for Huddersfield to accept, and ultimately Leeds' approaches have been knocked back, and O'Brien's still a Huddersfield player, and it's going to be that way until at least the January transfer window. Obviously £13 million, it's a lot of money, and I suppose my question for you, Billy, is: are you surprised to see that kind of money was not back?
As you say there, it's a very attractive offer of £13 million, but the fact that it was a 4th offer and it came very late in the window sort of means that they wouldn't have had a time and sort of the immediate funds to address sort of the void he leaves. I think he started the season and last season shows what a brilliant player he is. He's a very progressive midfielder who looks to sort of break the defensive lines, and what he brings to that team is very exciting, and a player that I think that Huddersfield fans will be just very, very happy with, that they've managed to keep him this summer. But at the same time, Leeds' interest, I don't think will die. If they can put a more attractive initial fee that Huddersfield view as worthy, then I can definitely see that one happening in January or beyond.
Yeah, and I mean, just off the back of that as well, and the transfer window closing, I think it's been quite widely reported that O'Brien's now in talks with Huddersfield over a new contract. His current deal expires at the end of the season. The club do have the option to extend that by a further 12 months, which leaves them secure. But they obviously want to get a player of O'Brien's, importance tied down long term. I suppose in the short term and the long term, Ben, it's good news for Huddersfield at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing pretty well on the pitch, and if they can tie O'Brien down to an extended contract, then I think that's good news all around. I mean, it might not be a case of keeping him for so many years. It might just be protecting his value, because if he gets to next summer and he's only got 1 year left, then obviously you're in a bit of a restricted position where he could just run down his contract, and in the summer of 2023 he's a free agent and he can assess his options. But if they manage to potentially get him tied down. There could be a release clause in there, perhaps, if does come in. But he seems to be the kind of player that, despite Leeds' interest, he will just get on with the job. Obviously, coming through the Huddersfield Town youth system, he's got a point to prove, and the fans have taken to him really well. And if he's in the team, they're always going to do well. I know he was a big part of last season when they struggled at the back end of the season, but it seems to be a positive vibe at the minute, and I can see that continuing if he's still around.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's been a difficult summer for Huddersfield, really. I think they've been busy in terms of the signings that they've made. There's a lot of new faces, and some really good loanees have been captured, but the actual, net spend hasn't really been massive. And I think that's been sort of a theme we've seen right across the Championship. But just sort of sticking on the topic of O'Brien, and it is, knocking back this kind of offer from Leeds, it is really backing Corberan in maybe a little bit of a different way. Would you agree with that, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, he got a lot of criticism at the back end of last season, didn't he, when the results started going wrong and they were dropping towards the relegation zone. But I think if you looked at the start of the summer and you were only making free agent signings, I think a lot of their business early, the likes of Jordan Road, Ollie Turton and what coming in for zero transfer fee, could have been seen as doing things on the cheap, kind of. But the fact they got to the end of the window and they're turning down big bids, even though they weren't going to be guaranteed the 13 million if he was sold. I think it is a big statement of intent that Hodgkinson does trust Corberan to get the best out of this team, and if they do continue to perhaps punch above the weight, kind of in the sense that they were probably tipped to do poorly this summer after the signings they made, then I could see bigger clubs looking at Corberan. Obviously, he's got the Leeds background and will work with Bielsa, but he'll always get attention from that. But I think with the bid being turned down for O'Brien, being offered a new contract, it does show a bit of faith in Corberan that he's the right man for the job.
Yeah, interestingly, we've just had a comment in from Dan Robbins, who thinks that Lewis O'Brien is worth £15 million at least. Now, that's an awful lot of money. Billy, you've already touched on the fact that £13 million is quite eye-catching. Your thoughts on £15 million at least?
Whoa, it's a figure that, considering that 13 million's been rejected, it's an offer that I'm not too sure Huddersfield would even consider themselves. And again, I think breaking that down even further, it's what's been paid up front. But 15 million for a player that's probably at Premier League level already, in my opinion, I think Dan is right with that comment. I think he's worth at least 15 million. He's got an excellent career ahead of him, and he's doing the business right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be interesting to see O'Brien's development, I think, over the course of the season. So next up, we're going to dive into League One with Sheffield Wednesday. So there's been a few reports kicking around, just discussing Bailey Peacock-Farrell, who's on loan at Sheffield Wednesday from Burnley, and he's had a really, really strong start to life on loan at Hillsborough. He's been part of a defensive unit that's punched, really, really strongly within the opening month of the season. Obviously, the results have turned a little bit for Sheffield Wednesday, but Peacock-Farrell's been good, and he showcased his quality as well with Northern Ireland on international duty. But there's reports that there is a recall clause for Burnley in the January transfer window. It's something that Darren Moore has been playing down. He's not too concerned about it. I'll come to you, Ben. Do you think that there should be a little bit of worry here for Sheffield Wednesday?
I don't think they've got anything to be concerned about. I mean, unless Nick Pope has a bad injury between now and January, then I think he'll be staying for the season. I think they paid a decent loan fee as well to get him to Hillsborough. So I think that should be taken into consideration. I think Burnley will trust Sheffield Wednesday to get the best out of him. And Burnley have got Wayne Hennessy anyway in reserve, who I think had a very good game in the Carabao Cup against Newcastle. I think they'll see Hennessy as good enough deputy. But he's been solid for both Sheffield Wednesday and Northern Ireland, like you alluded to, and up until Saturday, which we'll talk about in a minute. I think he had a very solid defence in front of him. He hadn't conceded to an opposition player until Saturday, and I think with a defence in front of him that would look very strong until on Saturday. He's looked like one of the best keepers in the division. You expect him to, with the experience he's got at international and championship level when he played for Leeds. I don't think they should be worried just Wednesday. I think he will stay there for this season, and maybe it could be a permanent deal in the summer if they do get promoted. I can only see him being in the championship next season with or without Sheffield Wednesday. He's that kind of a keeper, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of Sheffield Wednesday fans that'll be echoing your comments there, Ben. I think he's a vital performer for them this season in League One, and retaining him for the entire campaign is going to be key. Obviously, we've touched on there the fact that Sheffield Wednesday have had a few defeats. Now they were beaten 3-0 against Plymouth at the weekend, and it's quite a heavy defeat. We'll touch on that now, Billy. They've had a strong start, but things are getting a little bit tough for them now.
Yeah, as you say, it was a good start. They sat at the top of the table for a while. 4 clean sheets, all looks to be going swimmingly, and then they've hit a bit of a rough patch, really. I think, especially when you look at Saturday, a 3-0 defeat to Plymouth. Plymouth, to be fair to them, are looking like a team that will be in and around the playoff mix. They've started the season very well. Lowe's doing a good job there, but I think the majority of it has been sort of Sheffield Wednesday's own doing. And I think I've seen multiple reports from both ends suggesting that the midfield battle was non-existent, really. Plymouth dominated the midfield. And when you've got the players of Barry Bannon, Lewis Wing, George Byers, all brilliant footballers who could easily be playing at championship level, and you're being dominated like it apparently was, it's not a good sign. I think Sheffield Wednesday, they won't look into it too much, and if they do really have the title winning expectations as they should have, it's about bouncing back from results like this and getting back into that form as quickly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, some of the names that you've just sort of reeled off there, I'm fairly sure that Sheffield Wednesday can be quite confident in the fact that they're going to bounce back and sort of get their season back on track. We're going to move down into League Two now, and maybe one of League Two's sort of surprise packages in Harrogate Town. So it's been a superb start to the season for Harrogate, and currently they're sitting second in the table. They're playing really well. They picked up another decent point at the weekend against Newport with Luke Armstrong on the score sheet once again in a 2-2 draw against last season's beaten playoff finalists. Armstrong's got 5 goals in 6 games now, and he's matched that with 2 assists as well. He's been really, really impressive since signing for Harrogate in the summer transfer window. Ben, I'll come to you. How important do you think Armstrong is to Harrogate? Maintaining this fantastic start that they've had.
Well, all promotion teams really need a clinical goal scorer in the team, and he's definitely someone who's capitalised on his good form last season on loan at Hartlepool in the National League, and I think he just needed another chance in the EFL to prove himself. He was at Middlesbrough for a few years in their under-23s, and he had a loan spell at Accrington, then went to Salford, but he had kind of a rough deal there. He kept signing strikers and he kept getting pushed down the pecking order, hence why he was on loan at Hartlepool last season. But I think the deal to bring him to Harrogate now seems like a bit of a masterstroke. He's at an age where he can still develop into a striker who can play above League Two level. And he's proving right now that he could be that 20-goal season striker that a team like Harrogate need, because they did well finish with last season, the first season in Football League, and they bolstered the squad a little bit this summer, and it seems to be paying dividends.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll stick with you there again, Ben. Salford, you mentioned earlier. Do you sort of think that they might be looking at the deal that's taken Armstrong to Harrogate and maybe regretting it a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, they've had a few managers that Armstrong had played under, and they wouldn't have given him a chance. And I don't know if Gary Boyer ever got a look at him when he was caretaker at the back end of last season, or if he returned for pre-season or not. But I don't know what the finances involved in the deal was, if it was a free transfer, but it does look like a bit of a throwaway transfer for them. And considering they've not really been firing, I know they got a win against a big win against Bradford this past week. But they've really been firing on all cylinders, and it's one they could end up regretting at the end of the season should Harrogate maintain this kind of form and finish above Salford. There's a long way of the season to go. We just need to see if Armstrong maintains his form, and who knows in January if he's still one of the top scorers in the division. Some bigger clubs could end up calling for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Simon Weaver's doing a fantastic job at Harrogate. I think that the fact that they're just even in the position that they are at this stage of the season deserves massive, massive credit. Billy, do you see them as genuine contenders, or is it just a little bit of a fast start that's going to fade away eventually?
I think they keep proving the people that think they'll drop off wrong each week. I think no one wants to be playing Harrogate right now because they're a team in form and they're capitalising on their early form and progressing that into the sort of mid-season now. I think when you look at the teams that have played as well, they've played the likes of Leyton Orient, Mansfield, Newport on Friday as well, Rochdale, all teams that were expected to do quite well at the start of the season, all teams that were contenders for promotion when you look at the start of the season odds, and they've come away with 14 points from 6. So I think it would be wrong to dismiss that they can keep it up this season. And they're a team that they're targeting sort of experience and being strong defensively and progressing from there. They don't really have too much youth coming through. I know they have signed Jack Diamond on loan, but he's not fully integrated into the side yet. But I think once you can get players like him into the squad as well, I think they'll go from strength to strength.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be another interesting club to sort of keep an eye on between maybe now and Christmas, just to see whether they can sort of maintain what's been a really good start. So next up, we're just going to run you through some of the results for the Yorkshire clubs from around the EFL over the weekend. So as we touched on right at the top of the show with Sheffield United, they picked up an outstanding victory, beating Peterborough 6-2 on Saturday. They were the only side from Yorkshire to pick up 3 points this weekend, so obviously well done to them. Bournemouth were 3-0 winners over Barnsley. Stoke City beat Huddersfield Town 2-1. In League One, Plymouth were 3-0 winners over Sheffield Wednesday. Rotherham were beaten 4-2 by Fleetwood. Wigan came from behind to beat Doncaster 2-1, and Doncaster actually remain winless this season. Harrogate, 2-2 with Newport on Friday night, another positive result. And then, as Ben sort of touched on earlier, Salford beat Bradford 1-0. That was a late defeat for the Bantams. So that's it for this week's Yorkshire Roundup. Thanks to Ben and Billy and anyone that's tuned in and listened to us today. Likes, shares, subscribers. They're always appreciated on Football League World TV. This is today's final show. We've got plenty coming up over the rest of the week, though. Tomorrow we've got a Cardiff and Blackburn takeover show, as well as a midweek preview. So there's plenty of fixtures for whoever's on that show to get their teeth stuck into. So we'll hopefully see you all again soon.